We've cobbled it together, I think. We've got me and you. I'll tell you what, I'm waiting for some.
Hello and welcome to this week's God is a Geek podcast. My name's Chris Hyde. I'm not Adam Cook. Sadly, Adam's not feeling very well this week, so you're stuck with me. We're on episode 527, if you can believe that. That's how many we're up to now. But the great news is, this week I'm not on my own. No, I've got a very sexy guest with me. Hello, Mick Fraser.
Hello, mate. All right. That didn't sound like you rehearsed it at all.
No, mate, I've been practicing that in the shower all day. I was like, right, I need to nail this. How are you, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, actually. I'm good. Yeah, I was going to say I'm hoping for a bit of luck. I got shit on by a bird earlier, and I bought a scratch card, and it didn't win. So I'm hoping that the luck is going to manifest at some point this evening. So basically, what I'm saying is no pressure, but I'm expecting this pod to be something very special.
I mean, it's got the best cast, so that's lucky.
Well, Lyle's not here, you know.
Yeah. No, we obviously we wish Adam all the best. Hope he gets well soon. But we've got some pretty chunky games to talk about this week.
Indeed, yeah.
You've reviewed a few games. Obviously, we didn't have a podcast last week, so we've got a bit of catch up to do. But you've been reviewing some games. I've also been playing some of them, but I figured let's start with a game that actually isn't out yet, but the review you can find on the site as of today, which is Remnant 2. So, Mick, tell me about Remnant 2.
Oh, what a game. What a game. I was a bit late to the party with Remnant 1. So I was a little bit unsure, not unsure what to expect, because you assume that it's a sequel that's going to follow on to a certain extent. But I wasn't expecting it to be quite as just playable as it is. It's really, really good. I mean, I know you've been playing yourself as well, but I think it's just, I don't think I've played a Souls-like. Is it a Souls-like? Are we calling it a Souls-like?
Because I quite passionately think it's not. Like
I think it's like a Souls-light.
Yeah,
right. Like it's like Souls adjacent.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I think I'm going to say this quite a lot when we get to Game of the Year, but I think there's games this year that I think are getting put in that box, which aren't them. Like Jedi Survivor, I don't think is a Souls game. I think that the only thing that seems to me in this one is you rest at the crystals and the enemies respawn. Yeah, apart from that, there's a lot of differences in this game. But sorry, I've interrupted you because you have your question. But no, carry on, because let's talk more about this.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I mean, yeah, so it's not really a Souls-like. Like enemies respawn when you die, but I mean that's just like old games doing checkpointing, right?
Yeah.
I mean that's
exactly
really all it is,
you
know. So I don't think it's a Souls-like. It is hard. Fucking hell, some of it is. See, it was weird because I'd seen a couple of things, previews, because I think some people have had previews out this week. We didn't. We were doing the guides and waiting for the review to drop and that. And it's quite a big game, but it's not a big game. Like it took me about 20 hours to do the campaign, but then it's endless because you can keep replaying it. But I've seen a lot of previews out, and I've seen people sort of commenting about how hard it is. And for me, I thought it was easier than Remnant from the Ashes. And I don't know if that's because I was playing the first game this year, so we're already a couple of years since launch. There's been a lot of updates and changes and things added to it, but I don't think it was as hard as the previous game. Certainly not as hard as what you'd term a Souls-like.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should probably say from the start there obviously are difficulty settings, aren't there? There's different challenge settings 2, I think, are unlocked from the start, and then 2 more can be unlocked, or something. No, 3 are unlocked from the start.
Yeah,
maybe.
You've got Survivor and Veteran.
Yeah.
And then you've got Nightmare. And then you've got Apocalypse, because I think it's funny that you've got Survivors when you're picking the difficulty at the beginning. So when you start your first playthrough, you can pick Survivor, Veteran, Nightmare, and it says at the bottom, this is recommended for such and such. This is for players who've done it before. This is for players who want a challenge. And the Apocalypse is grayed out; it doesn't say anything. And then when you've completed the campaign, you don't start a new game plus, you re-roll the campaign the same as you do in Remnant from the Ashes. Apocalypse is lit up and it just says good luck. So I thought, I'm not going to bother, and I'll be honest with you, I'm still on Survivor difficulty, because
I think for me, like, because I agree with you, it compared to, I guess, the difficulty that you maybe would associate with a Souls game. I haven't played the first Remnant game, I will say that, but which we'll come on to in terms of kind of how this game deals with things. But I think there's a different type of difficulty and arguably limited ways to kind of get around difficulty in this game. Like the enemies sort of scale with your power level, generally speaking, and like you can't really grind your way out of a problem. And so I guess for some people, their way of overcoming challenge then say Souls games would be that type of approach, thinking, oh, well, this area is, an easy area, I can grind my way out of it. It's not really the case in this game. It's as difficult as it is almost from the outset, isn't it? And I guess it has to be because of the way it sets its stall out in terms of the, I guess, random nature of it, which we probably should talk about in terms of how it deals with its story, or shall we say?
Well, so it doesn't. So I don't want to correct too much, but it doesn't exactly scale with you. So what happens is when you roll a new campaign or adventure mode, it scales to your highest piece of gear, basically. So it scales to like, and it's a bit different. It scales to your power level. Sorry, the first game scaled to your highest piece of gear. This is a bit different. So it scales to your power level, but it doesn't then scale with you like as you get stronger. So if you find that it's become too easy and you don't want to up the difficulty fully, you can re-roll a campaign, and then it will begin. So if you're power level 12, it will re-roll the campaign at that power level, and then you can continue to play up until, if you want it to be a more of a challenge, then you can up the difficulty. I don't know, and I haven't checked this, so I don't know if you get different drops or gear or items in higher difficulty. So for me, I don't see the need. Like, I'm not a gamer that chases challenge. Like, I don't feel like I have to challenge myself. So I'm quite happy to sit in Survivor and grind it and play it. And it, like you said, the procedural nature of it. So for people who don't know, when you say re-roll a campaign, so when you begin a campaign, the first world, so there's 3 main worlds, I think. There's kind of 4, but like the Loathsome world is kind of the same world, but from a different
perspective. Yeah,
perspective. Kind
of. It is confusing. But there's essentially, I guess, multiple worlds, isn't there? That's the point.
Yeah. So you've got multiple worlds. You've got like there's a jungle world. There's like an alien planet. There's no world. No, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's no world like in the first game where it's, because the first game you sort of usually begin. When the first playthrough of the first game, you start in like a post-apocalyptic Earth. That's where you begin, and then you can re-roll that, and then it changes it later. In Remnant 2, when you begin a campaign, whether you've played it before or not, it randomizes that starting world.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a phone ringing somewhere.
No, it's all right. So essentially, like there's like 4 worlds.
Yeah. So
we played it, didn't we? And like you started in one world, and I started in another, and I was like,
well, you and Adam started in 2 sides of the same world.
That's right, because I kept arguing with you because you kept calling his world my world, and I was like, no, that's my world, not his world. But it's because they're called the same thing, but from different perspectives.
Loathsome. So you've got Loathsome Dran, which is kind of like Bloodborne, isn't it? Like it's just, and I feel like it is deliberately.
Yeah, it very much feels like a kind of like dark, like suburban gothic type. It is going for that aesthetic, isn't it? Like,
yeah. Whereas then on the flip side of it, when you go to sort of the other version of Loathsome, the Fae, that's like you're in Anor Londo or somewhere.
Yeah,
from
exactly.
Dark
Yeah,
Souls.
it is.
And it's
yeah.
and I think that which for me, and I said it in the review, is probably so if you haven't played the first game, you wouldn't have known. But Gunfire Games did a similar thing in the first game. It was still randomized, it was still procedural. But the level that Remnant 2 goes to is just it's insanely creative. I mean, even down to like the music between different worlds. I mean, the music in Loathsome Dran, which is like the Bloodborne inspired, it kind of sounds like a creepy version of the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes theme.
Yeah, no, it does.
And it's all
yeah.
like it's like a Danny Elfman style sort of, and it's just amazing. And I think that the strength of Remnant 2, even more so than the first game, and certainly more so than anything. And I'm not going to compare this, I kind of am, but in terms of like scale, it's not like an Elden Ring. You know, like how Elden Ring was just phenomenally vast from the outset, where you can go anywhere you want from the beginning. So you can't do that in Remnant 2. It's not open. You know, you do have to follow a path, even though the path itself is randomized down, I don't even know how many different channels.
Yeah.
But the sense of like creativity and the variety is just
I will say that
mind-boggling.
The Elden Ring comparison comes true for me when I think about, you probably didn't experience this as much as me because obviously you played it before release a lot, right? But like, I remember when playing Elden Ring and everyone in our Discord was like sharing their like water cooler moments of how what they'd played like last night and stuff, and having different experiences because it was so vast. People are like, oh, have you done that bit yet? Like, no, I haven't even seen that bit because I turned left instead of right at this this crossroads. Whereas I find there's a lot of those moments in Remnant 2 because of how different and nuanced each kind of adventure can be, even in the same set of worlds. Like, because you know, because we've talked, you've played the same, world as me, and I've experienced stuff you haven't, and you've experienced stuff that I haven't, down to kind of landmarks, bosses, like items and things, and you know, developers are pretty clear out there. You won't see it, you physically can't see everything in one playthrough because of the random nature. Some things aren't in your world, and you, like you say, you re-roll them and you play them again, and then you'll find new stuff in those same worlds. And I'm not being like over the top. I genuinely can't think of a game like this that plays like that. Normally they're very crafted in their kind of like the way they're put together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So the closest example is probably, no, I don't know, because it's not really procedural, but like Dead Cells, for example. Like, you know, I don't know how much of Dead Cells you've played, but Dead Cells, again, you've got multiple different routes through different, like through the game from the start. But again, like, I know, I guess that's bad, because again, that's choice, and this isn't your choice. Like, there is no.
You have no say on this.
Exactly. I mean, there are choices in Remnant 2. Don't get me wrong. There's a few story choices where someone will say, "Can you go and kill this guy? Can you go and kill this monster?" And I haven't, because I haven't played through those campaign or those world sections again yet. I don't know what would happen if I said, because there's one where that you like meet this empress in this world. I'm going to be as vague as possible to avoid spoilers with people. But you meet the empress of this world, and she says, "Go and kill this monster for me." And you can right from the start tell her to do one, which I didn't. I said, okay, I'll go and do it. And then I went and killed the monster. Then when I came back and she rewarded me, and then I was given the option to bend the knee or again tell her to do one. And I bent the knee, and I went like for the basically just to see what happened. Of course, then that choice is made. You're done. You're on to the next bit. So until I go back through that world, and the trouble is, I don't know, because of the nature of like the world we were talking about, Loathsome, where you either start in the palace courtyard and you're in the Fae version, and that goes through, and you've got a quest to kill a certain king, Whereas if you land in the Dran version, it's the same world. You some of the dungeons will overlap, but the story's different, which is what you had. Which is why when I finished the campaign, which we can talk about the final boss in brief if you like, but when I finally finished the campaign, I immediately just rolled a new campaign, and I just rolled it 4 or 5 times until I landed on your starting world, because I hadn't seen in my whole playthrough, I'd never seen your version of Loathsome, so I hadn't seen your world and your storyline, and it sounded really cool, so I re-rolled it. But then within a couple of dungeons, I had played, I think, 2 new dungeons. Then I saw one that I'd already done, so I did that again and got, leveled up a bit, whatever, because it's there and it was fun. And then I got one that you hadn't even seen in your last playthrough.
And also on that, to be clear, if people don't know, like I cover every inch of the map and do all the side quests, because it's quite clear on the map which routes to go for side quests and which routes to go for the main
a good job there.
Story. So like, because the map is actually really good in this game. I'm not used to having such a good map because it helps me scour every corner and pixel to find everything. But like, you were saying, oh, you found that? I'm like, no. And I know for a fact it doesn't exist in my version of my world because I've been everywhere.
Yeah.
And I in some sense, I feel like get massive FOMO because you feel like, I'm missing out to it. But I think it's quite cool because then you're in a situation where it's not just a case of you could play it again, for the shits and giggles or for the challenge or whatever. But there's stuff you will discover and get from this game that you just didn't get. And not all of it's linked to choice. Some of it is, but some of it isn't. And I just found that really interesting.
Well, I mean, I played as well. Like I went through the campaign as standard, so I got my worlds. It was nice and random. I didn't know what I might be missing or what I wasn't, even though we were talking. And then I got to the end, and again, without spoiling anything, there were story elements that were left unresolved. So I'd reached the end. The main story I felt had resolved. I don't think the story's great. I don't think it has enough room, probably because of the procedural and the random nature of it. I don't think it has enough room for the characters to grow in any real way. Like they just sort of do their thing and then the story ends and then you re-roll it and you do it again. But
I find actually that the kind of little stories in the world's a little bit more interesting than the overarching one. Because the overarching one is very like rudimentary, do this, to be good and complete the quest kind of thing. But the actual stories of the characters that you find, they're not grand, but there is some interest to them in the dialogue.
But again, because they're also multi-branching, so they can go all several ways. And then and again, you've got this thing where you might miss something in one playthrough, so you'll get a lot of lore about something, but then you don't get the missing piece of whatever that lore story is. Then you go back and play it again, and you might get a different dungeon that gives you a bit more lore. The one thing I will say that I think is quite clever is that they tend to leave the drops. So the rings, you find a lot of rings and amulets. You can find guns. You can find those things tend to be in the same place. So regardless of how many times you've played a world, which I like, because at least then when you're trying to find a specific thing on a second playthrough or for guides or just because you want a specific build, you need a
nice to be able to say you find this thing here.
I mean, you might not get there in a playthrough or an adventure mode, but at least you know that when you do see that world, it's like, I need to do that because I need that item. And likewise for the archetypes, which there's a guide out. There's going to be guides everywhere now from different people about the secret archetypes, which again, I'm not going to spoil in the podcast, but they exist. You've got the starting archetypes and then there are others and you can go and find them. And some of them require a puzzle or maybe just a drop, or maybe you've got to find a specific item or vendor and I think it's really clever that those things, some of them are in a locked position on the route. Other ones, I mean, like I said to you, I found one yesterday and I've no idea where I got the item from. I just had it and I unlocked another archetype and I don't know how I picked it up or who dropped it. So I just think it's an incredibly well thought out game, I think, and incredibly well put together. And I do wish the story was a little bit richer. I think I'd because there's so much lore in the world and there's so much stuff and so I do wish the story was a little bit richer and there was a little bit more to sink your teeth into, but I don't think it needs it because it's gameplay first, this game.
100%. And I was going to say about that because I haven't really talked about like the gameplay, like the gunplay in this is really tight. Like
Yeah,
the
it's
shooting is really good,
fantastic,
which it kind of has to be. There is like melee options, but they're kind of like you're using them as last resort, or if you're low on ammo or trying to save ammo. But so the shooting needs to be good, and it really does feel tight and responsive. You're not, you're hitting things, they take damage. It's very satisfying, the gunplay. Done really well. The other thing, we'll just pause myself there because we have had a super chat from Mick who says rare episode with good people only. So I told you, Mick, there's your bird poo. There's your bird poo super chat from Mick. But the other thing I did just want to say about this is about the co-op, because there's obviously a dark cloud over like FromSoft type games, which is like, it's like a terrible thing, but like they make the co-op like really difficult sometimes to actually get into, and they kind of get away with it because it's
I don't like the way they do it. I don't like that it boots you after a boss or whatever.
And obviously in Elden Ring it was like you can only go this far, and then you must, you're in a section, and that's it. Whereas in this game, not only is it relatively straightforward to join each other, and you can have someone queuing up to join you, and then you just have to go to a crystal to bring them in, but the game really works well as a co-op game as well. Like it's designed to be a squad of you with like you say, different archetypes. Like I'm obviously the medic, so like I'm there trying to heal people and stuff, and then there's you guys like shooting. But like I like the fact that it plays better, I think, when you're working as a team. Like I don't mind doing solo stuff; it's absolutely fine. But I always look forward to when playing together, because like I just feel like the game, it clicks better when you've got like 2 or 3 of you fighting together. And I like the fact that you can mix and match the archetypes and have like secondaries and stuff. If you want to find out how to have secondary archetypes, there's a guide on
GodIsAGeek.com.
That wasn't even planned. You think, I
think they synergize really well.
They
as
do.
Well. I think that's the other thing, that you can mix and match your archetypes. I don't know how many there are in the game. That's not been revealed yet. No, I don't think anyone I've seen has found all of them yet. They will. But the fact that they synergize so well when you're playing on your own, and you can mix and match, like once you've unlocked them, you can swap them in and out as much as you like. But it's also the fact that the majority of buffs and perks and things like that affect the party. It's not just, they don't just affect your character. So like the other time when, like if you're playing 2 characters or 2 players have, you have 2 players who have like, a handler, for example. Like I think you spec'd into handler for your second archetype, whereas it was my whereas it was my prime archetype. But once you've both got like your dogs with you, and like I think Adam mentioned it, like in Elden Ring, it takes your horses away when you co-op. Whereas in Remnant 2, if I've got a dog and you've got a dog, they're both there.
Just got dogs. It's great. Yeah.
But the best thing is that, like, because of the different perks, you can set, like, my dog can either draw threat or heal the party or buff the party's damage, and yours can do one of the other things. So even if all 3 of you played as handler, you could still go in and play all 3 of those perks together.
Because I was a medic, as I said, like, and I was rocking I had this ring where I was like, oh, when you heal, it heals your teammates as well. I'm like, well, I haven't got any teammates at the moment, so that felt like. But as soon as you guys play with you guys, and that turned out to be a really useful thing, because you could be miles away, and if as long as I'm healing, you guys get healed as well. Whereas most of those things tend to be like an area of effect type thing, and like things like that. There's lots of different, like you mentioned the rings. There are so many rings, that you can pick up, but they've all got like interesting different things that give you a bonus if you're playing in a certain way. And you I always found that when you pick one up and go, that would be really good if you were that archetype rocking that situation. I can see how that would be useful. It might not be for me now, but I can see how that would be useful.
I must have 50 plus rings. I don't know how many there are, but I'm sure I've got upwards of 50, because it's a big grid in the inventory and it's full. And I haven't got as many amulets, and I don't have quite as many guns, because I've either picked up guns or I've bought a couple just to try them out. But I mean, to be fair, I still use mostly the gun I got at the beginning, because I've upgraded it so much. And, obviously, we probably need to move on to the game. But I mean, you slot modifiers and mutators, and that changes. There's so much in this. And I think we're going to be picking it apart for a lot of weeks or even months to find all the secrets and all the little things that.
Yeah.
I mean, the min maxers will they'll be in some form of heaven/hell because they've got all these options and choices to min max a build, but finding them, it's like a crazy kind of RNG.
Yeah, trying to find, because you see all these things like don't you sometimes on like Dark Souls where there's had to beat all the bosses in one hit and stuff, and then they proper like min max to the nth degree. You can see it happening with this game. I mean, I always find, because there's obviously so many games, it may have been mentioned once or twice, there's a lot of games at the moment. You know, the fact that we're talking like, oh, when we've all got a free moment this weekend, we'll get together and play it, and you know, it's not we're not playing it for review or anything at that point. It's like afterwards, after the game, I think
just want to play more.
Want to play more of it, and you know, see more of the stuff, and you know, because it's very enjoyable. So I hope it feels like the first one was like a bit of a kind of cult classic, and I hope that this one gets the airtime that it deserves.
The first one was a bit of a sleeper. Like, it just arrived, and all of a sudden, everybody was just, and I don't think anybody expected it to be as good as it was, because I think Gunfire Games were fairly unknown then. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure, I don't even know if it was their first game. I haven't checked it out, but no one expected it to be that good, and everybody just went, "Oh, it's Dark Souls with guns," you know. And it turned out, no, it's really not at all. It's very, very much its own thing. In fact, it's got way less Dark Souls in it than it has like a standard third-person action game. That's what it feels like. It's just got a level of challenge. And these days, everybody, if a game's hard, everyone goes, "Oh, it's a Souls-like." It doesn't mean, you know, it's very different to that style of game. And then I think so. The thing I've noticed about Remnant 2 is how hyped people are for this game. Like, people are ravenous for this game because of how Remnant from the Ashes was received.
Yeah.
So I do think that this one's going to do well. And I mean, it's like I said in the review, there's scope in Remnant 2 for this to be tweaked and added to. I mean, I don't like to talk about DLC when a game's not even out yet, you know, but, but you know, you can see it coming, because you can imagine that this is going to sell way more, I think, than Remnant from the Ashes. This is going to do much better for Gunfire Games, and rightly so as well. It's fully deserved. So I hope that leads to this game sort of, I don't want it to become live service or anything, but I can see this game growing and expanding beyond what it is now. And I mean, it's going to be weeks or months or however long before I think somebody's even mapped out everything and has seen every biome that you can possibly see.
Yeah.
But I can just see this game being one of those that, when we get to that point, Gunfire Games go, well, now this is coming as well, so we're going to expand it. And I really hope that happens. I hope that it does well enough that this lasts, like goes the distance like Remnant from the Ashes has, because I think it really deserves it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of games that were cult hits and people can't wait for sequels of, should we talk about Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals? Now, you've reviewed this one as well, so I'm going to give you the floor again.
Okay. So this is a game that...
very different.
Very, very different. Same score. Okay, I gave him the same score. For very different reasons.
Other scores are available.
But no, so again, this is a game where, like you said, the first one came out, Oxenfree, sort of came out to no fanfare. Like, it was just an indie game. I think, was it back in the time when there was still Xbox Summer of Arcade, or was it after that? I think it was 2016, so I'm not sure if it was part of that. But it was a game that just sort of crept in, and nobody really... all of a sudden, people were kind of talking about it. But again, it's one of those that people talked about for a bit, because I don't think it was particularly deep. I certainly don't remember thinking that the first game was as good as I felt the second game was. So it's I mean, is it a narrative adventure? I guess it's a narrative adventure,
I think
isn't
that's
it? Like,
fair,
there's no combat. A lot of it is talking. But Oxenfree, the first game, which, you know, the sequel carried on, obviously, sort of, I don't know if it pioneered it, but I'd never seen it before. This method of dialogue, where the dialogue was so integral to what you were doing that it just happened alongside it. So as opposed to some games where you'll stop and have a conversation or whatever, in Oxenfree, for those who haven't played Oxenfree or the sequel, it's dialogue is presented as three choices. Usually, there's three
normally
choices.
3, isn't there? Yeah.
If you're playing on a controller, it'll give you a choice for sort of A, Y, B, or whatever.
I was going to say which letters.
I'm trying to think which controller
Left,
I've been
right,
playing with. Yeah, so X, Y, B. They're your options.
Yeah.
So whatever else you're doing, whether you're climbing, whether you're jumping, whether you're trying to solve a puzzle, whatever, when the dialogue comes up, you push a button and your character will speak that line of dialogue, and then the other characters respond to it. There's so much dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think in the first game it fell down a little bit because you're playing as a group of snarky teens, so some of the dialogue got a little bit tiresome for some people. The mystery took a long time in the first game to really to realize what was kind of going on, and then by the time it did, and you started to get invested, it ended. It's a very short game. Whereas in Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals, I think going into that, having played the first game, I think I played it through twice when I reviewed the first game. So going into the second game, knowing what the first game was about and knowing what to expect actually kind of helped, because I didn't mind waiting for the mystery to.
But also, I think, again, I'm not going to spoil even the opening, but I feel like the opening even sort of sets a stall out of things ain't right kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't just go dum-de-dum for the first hour thinking everything's fine. You know
straight away,
the first moment that it's not right. And
I do think for sort of like a little like a hand-drawn world, and a game that seems from the outset to be quite small scale, like it's one of those games you say it's a nice little indie game, which sounds condescending, but it's not. It's a very small scale game. You know, it's not big budget and stuff going on, so it kind of disarms you with how clever it is and how much is actually going on.
Yeah,
because I mean, me, you, and Adam were pulling our hair out over a couple of the mysteries. that we just couldn't solve.
I don't think I have ever hypothesized so much about a game with people. You know, obviously we were talking about it before release, and I'm sure people will be doing this now. Like maybe that happens because of this, or maybe this is, you know, and some of it obviously we were trying to cover for like guides and stuff, but others it's like, well, why did that happen to you? And that didn't happen to me. What did you say then? And it's not just, you know, when you think about something like, I don't know, a supermassive game where it's like you make decisions and stuff happens, right? I'm playing that very simple with the mechanics of a supermassive game, but like I would say like Oxenfree 2, it's not as overt like what your decisions are, the implications that are happening. Like in a supermassive game, it's like dun dun dun, you've just made a critical decision kind of thing.
Charlie will remember that.
It's that kind of thing. Yeah, and it's just like in this one, you're like, well, it could have been at any point in the past 4 hours, I might have said something or not said something when I should have done, or I don't know, or not have gone somewhere. You think I've no idea, but I don't think I've ever had a game where I've like, well, maybe that's why that's happened, or that's what you need to do if you want this to happen and stuff. And for a game you're trying to guide, that's quite infuriating because you want to figure it all out. But it, you know, what I mean, you gave it a 9.5, right? It's a very enjoyable game to jump into and then jump back into again and try different things. A bit like what we're saying with Remnant. Like, you know, you said I wanted to jump straight back in as soon as you finished the game, to see, well, what if I do some different? What if I'm an arsehole this time round?
Yeah,
what happens
that's
then?
exactly it. And I think as well, it's funny you mentioned like supermassive games, because so I've not played, I think you've played all of them for sure. I think you've reviewed probably most of them.
Yeah.
And I haven't. I've only dabbled in Until Dawn. Was that even supermassive?
Yeah, that was one of the first ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and The Quarry. I played a little bit of The Quarry. Not really my thing. I'm not much into horror and stuff like that. But like the branching narrative and the way things change, depending on your choices and what you say, is really cool. But what I find in those games is that you'll get that little moment where you make a decision and you can kind of just get the game, like the game's thinking. Do you know what I mean? Like the game goes, oh, hang on a minute, and then it carries on, and you think it's just had a moment where now your choices have just now informed the next whatever.
Yeah,
happens.
and sometimes it might cut itself a bit weird or something.
Yeah, or sometimes the dialogue feels a little bit out of place. And I can understand why that is. You know, these are games that have got to account for players making players trying to break the game by going, what if I
100%,
just do this? Whereas the difference between that and like Oxenfree 2, Lost Signals, even more so than the first Oxenfree, is that you never feel that. You never sense for a second that you haven't picked the choice you're supposed to pick, like ever. You'll have a dialogue scene where you could be an arsehole, or you can be friendly, or you can change the subject. Whatever you do, the game just continues, and you never get a moment where you go, hang on a minute, should I have done that? What's happened? And then you don't even know the consequences till maybe a couple of hours later. Or like there's little bits where someone will be talking and you'll go up to like a billboard or something in a town, you click on it, and Riley will interrupt the person. So rather than just her dialogue plays over it and the dialogue stops, she'll say, hold on a second, I'm looking at this, what's this? And then after she's done that bit, the other person will say, oh, sorry, where was I? And I know that it sounds little, but you can do it over and over again so many times.
The other thing that I noticed, I mentioned to Adam, I don't know if you noticed this when you were playing, but like, say, because the guy that you're with, Jacob, he likes a natter. Let's just say that, right? He likes a chat, and the voice acting is really good. I really like the voice acting.
The script and the voice acting is fantastic.
And like, so he'll be talking to you about something, and you might get to the end of the screen to transition to a new part of the map, or want to go into a cave or a building or something. And sometimes I was like, well, hang on, no, this is actually quite an interesting bit of chatter. I want to hear it, because normally in most games, you go into a building and go, oh, well, I've lost that now. That the moment's passed, whatever. And actually, if you wait, like a little prompt comes on the screen going, the conversation will continue if you go in here. And then you do, and then it even continues over the loading screen, like to transition. Like the conversation carries on, so you don't miss any of it. And I was like, that's really cool. Like not only is it like proud of that, but it's like, no, don't worry. The conversation's going to carry on. You're not going to miss anything. And I just thought that was a really nice, like little touch. And like you say, there is the interrupting thing as well, because there's nothing more infuriating than two bits of dialogue talking over each other and you're not being able to figure out what's going on. I agree with you. I think I really liked Oxenfree, to be really clear. I don't want to be down on Oxenfree.
No, not at all. No, I did like the game.
The story and the ending and some of the like shocking things that happen in Oxenfree and very thought provoking and stuff. But I do agree with you. I think the kind of choice of character in like Riley, who's the main protagonist, and then Jacob, I think they have a lot of good dialogue. It's slightly more, I don't say adult, because it sound like it's a bit of blue for dads, but like, it's more adult conversation and stuff. I think, I've been really impressed, like having come from someone that plays branching narrative games and seems massive, and there are occasions where you go, you fudge those two bits together and it sounds a bit odd. And like you say, it doesn't, because it's not done in that way. It's not as cause and effect of your choice as this is. And if it is, it's very, very subtle in the way it does it.
And I mean, in fairness to them, Supermassive games, those games are a lot more. I won't, I'm not putting Oxenfree 2 down, but it's a very different scale of game. Like, this, they've
100%.
got,
there's more characters and stuff going on.
Supermassive have got a lot going on. They've got voice actors and guys in, it's mocap a lot of the time.
And everything. 100%.
So to be able to, I mean, this is very different. This is simple. The animations in Oxenfree will be the same regardless of what you're saying and stuff. So it is an easier thing to do, but I do think that it sets in terms of what these little narrative adventures can do. I think I'm really excited to see what Night School Studios do next, whether they do another Oxenfree game or whether they go somewhere else. Because I said to Adam about the first Oxenfree, and I said the same about this, and I think he disagreed, but I kind of always wanted them to go to a darker place. Like I always felt with Oxenfree that when it just started to get dark, it is when it sort of petered off to the end, and then whereas Oxenfree 2, I don't think peters off. I think the end is great. I think it's a great climax. I think it's a great it's got a great crescendo, the story, I think, and it ends in a good way. Excuse me. And it resolves things in a satisfying way, regardless of which ending you choose as well. Whichever ending you see, you don't think, I wish I'd done the other one. It's very cleverly done. But I do think that those games, I think if you've got somebody like Supermassive with that exact technology, that were going to take you to darker, creepier, maybe more unsettling places, I think that could be incredibly effective, because it's really immersive and you don't expect it to be, because it is a little 2D, indie game.
Yeah.
You don't expect it to be as immersive as it is, but because Riley's a fantastic protagonist, I think. And I mean, you say what you like about, female protagonists in games. Sometimes it goes a little bit too Mary Sue, or all that discourse doesn't apply here. Like, she's such a fantastic character. Like, never does the fact that she is a woman really come into play, other than the fact of just how strong a character she is without being over the top or in your face, and there's stuff that there's stuff in the story that I wouldn't want to spoil, that's very, very,
but like,
very,
even,
very dependent on her being a woman.
But even if, like, because you can obviously choose, as with anything, so you can obviously choose for her to be an asshole, or strong independent response, or playful, or whatever. There's different things you can choose, but even then it doesn't ever feel like it. You still feel like you're controlling someone that is a little bit vulnerable, but strong-willed, but is replying in a way that still feels natural, even if it's that or that or that. Do you know what I mean? I never felt like that doesn't feel like something Riley would say, if that makes sense. It always felt like I could see her saying that or that, even though they're very different.
And I like the fact that you could choose the negative option, or the less cheery option, or even the insulting option, and you wouldn't just get a little thing in the corner that went ping. Jacob is upset. Jacob will remember that. Didn't do that. He just responded in a certain way, but then the conversation would continue, and he would respond in a realistic way. Like, there's a couple of bits where you could basically tell him to pull his socks up and get on with it, or there's a scene at the beginning where he wants to take a rest on a bench. And the first time I played it, he said, I feel like I need to take a minute. And I put, let's take 5 minutes. And they sit and have a conversation. And the second time I played it, I thought, well, just to see what happens. So I said, no, we're going to keep going. And Riley kind of told him off. And he sort of went, oh, okay, yeah, I guess we can keep going. And then they still had the same conversation. That moment had passed, but it was really naturalistic the way it happened.
No,
it wasn't like a big deal that...
I did the same, mainly because the second playthrough I had places to be and stuff to tick off. But like, I did exactly the same thing. Like, I'm always nicey the first time. And even that one example, you're like you say, it's not like it's not like, oh, it's like a weird short response. It's like, okay, how would this essentially nice person react if you're an asshole to them? And it is like, and also you don't know, like, okay, does that mean they're not going to have this type of one of the conversations in the future?
That's it. You don't know how it's going to affect you later on.
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, you gave it a 9.5. It's a very worthy sequel. I'd obviously played Oxenfree. I hadn't played Remnant, but like, I played Oxenfree. I really enjoyed it. I feel like this one, like you say, just grabbed me a little bit more, got me more from the start. And I think that I think that I prefer the characters just a little bit more, and like you say, it resolves a bit more. Whereas I felt that the first, again, without spoiling anything, the first game, I felt it was a little too open-ended, almost to a little bit unsatisfyingly so. I still liked it, but I was like, okay. Whereas this one definitely resolves stuff, like, say, irrespective of your choices, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I do think that you relate easier to, like, because of like the age we are, you relate more to Riley and Jacob, because they're characters in their 30s.
Yeah.
But they are characters in their 30s, whereas in the first game it was all teens. In this game, these are characters that have been through stuff. They've lost people, or they've got estranged siblings, or they've got bad backs. Jacob moans about his back hurting when he has to climb everywhere. Riley, there's one bit where you can make her try and jump a gap and she'll fall because she's overstretching
I love that,
because
that's a reference to the first game, isn't it?
But, I mean, or you can just climb down. You miss that. So like, those little things are just, I think they make the characters just that little bit more relatable, and I think that's probably why it gripped me a lot more than the first game.
Same with me. A very good sequel, and again, one that I hope gets the love, but I think it will, because I think there's a lot of love for the first game.
I hope so.
So I think it falls into the same bucket. Now, the last game on this list, Mick, I haven't played and really don't know anything about, and that's Jagged Alliance 3. So I'm going to, again, for the
Yeah.
third time, hand the floor to you, but I'm probably not going to be able to chip in as much with this is what I think. So what's it about?
So this is a threequel, actually. I don't actually know how many Jagged Alliance games there are. There could be one of those things where there's like loads and they've got subtitles. I think there's 3. I know this is a game that it's by Hemimont Games. I know that the second, that Jagged Alliance 2, and I think I played it, but I certainly didn't review it because it was a while back. And I don't think it did that well. I think it got quite a lot of criticisms from people. The developers wanted to avoid that, so they wanted to really put, and they even said that, I think, in one of the blogs that they'd put out, that and before the preview, because I previewed this a couple of months ago, that they'd really tried to listen to complaints from that community, really tried to carry that forward into the third game, and even though I don't have the second game to compare it to, you can tell how much effort they've put into this. So it's a turn-based tactical shooter. I'm not going to say it's an XCOM clone. It's nothing like
you're going to say it's like
XCOM, but it's a similar vein. It is that genre, so it is turn-based.
Yeah.
But basically, you play as like in XCOM, you play as an outside force. Controlling everything. So you're the director of this mercenary group called AIM, and you've been called to this country called Grand Chien, which means big dog. Excuse my pronunciation of the French.
French. But, yes.
Yeah,
Grand Chien.
I'm sure it means big dog.
Sean?
Big hound or something.
Yeah,
my son just shouted it does, so he knows. But yes, but this fictional country in sort of West Africaistan or somewhere, like I don't know where it's meant to be. It's that sort
West Africaistan. Wow.
It's kind of that. I don't want to say third world, but it kind of is a third world setting. It's like I tell you what it's like. It's like playing like watching an 80s action movie, and that's what they've gone for deliberately. Everything about it feels like an 80s action movie. It's an undisclosed country somewhere where there's bad guys and they've deposed a president, and your mercenary group has been called in to save them. But the cool thing about Jagged Alliance 3 is the mercenaries themselves. So there's 40 of them in this game, right? And
you can choose between 40 different.
There's 40 mercenaries, 40 characters. And at the beginning, you're given your contract. And your contract is go rescue the president of Grand Chien, whatever it is. So you've got the opening of the game is like a little laptop, and you're on the laptop, and it's basically all these mercenaries, and you've got a certain amount of money to spend, and the mercenaries have tiers.
Okay.
You can really
so it's like one of those like Twitter things where it's like you've got $15. How do you spend it?
Exactly that. So you pick 4 or 5 or 3, depending on how much money you want to spend.
Yeah.
The mercenaries come with specialties. So you've got like heavy weapons, you've got hackers, you've got mercenaries that specialize in stealth, you've got snipers, you've got all these different classes of mercenary, and then you can pick whoever you want. You can take absolutely whoever you want. If you can afford them, they can be on your team. Now, the first time it does guide you to 4 mercenaries, and it sort of says that pick these because you've got this woman is really good with a sniper rifle. This guy is a medic. You've got those options. But if you don't want to, you can say no, and you can pick someone else. And so basically, you spend your money, you hire the mercenary for 7 days or 5 days, whatever their contract is. You stamp it, and then you take them out into the field. And then you roam around. It's not open world, but the areas are open. You can roam around, you can look in chests, you can loot dead bodies and things like that. But then when combat happens, it switches to turn-based combat. So you get into cover, you've got Overwatch, you've got your special abilities, you've got action points. Very, very similar to any sort of turn-based tactics game of the last sort of 15 years. If you've played a lot of those, you know what to expect. It's got one of the most infuriating chance to hit mechanics I've ever played. I hate chance to hit, and if you read any review I've ever done of a turn-based tactics game, and I've done lots, chance to hit I cannot stand. It's the bane of my life with these games. I hate it. There's so many games these days that have done something just a little bit different. Like, you always hit, but you might do less or more damage, like in the game like Shogunners and things like that. You rarely miss in that. In this, you miss all the fucking time. You'd miss the floor if you shot at it while laying on it. It's that kind of it's so infuriating, because you're here, the mercenaries there, you've got a clear line of sight, you fire and it goes over their head and they don't move, and it irritates me every time. It's got one of the worst examples of that at the beginning, though. So because you can upgrade and level up and improve your mercenary skills, so the longer they stay alive, the longer you extend their contract, because once their contract runs out, you'll get a message saying that they're going to bugger off unless you pay them more money. You can be halfway through like a campaign scenario as well, and so you finish the mission, and then in between missions there's a passage of time, and during the passage of time you can do things like train militia to defend the towns you've liberated, you can heal your characters, you can train them up, you can do all these things, but that has a passage of time between the missions, so it will tick along, and when it hits a certain point, when their contract runs out, if you haven't got enough money for them, they just leave. So you've got to be sure that you're earning enough money and you've got your upkeep, but of course you've got like a black market to buy weapons from, you've got all these little things so there is quite a good management system in there. But the coolest thing about it is that these mercenaries all have personality, they all have voiced lines, they'll all chip in.
All 40 of them?
Blimey. Yeah, so you can roll the dice and pick 4 random characters, and those characters will say lines of dialogue during conversational cutscenes. So, and the cutscenes aren't animated, they're static cutscenes, so the NPCs will always have the same dialogue, but your mercenaries will chip in at different times with comments. And some of, like, you've got a guy who's like a real like butch American Texan guy and he's not all that bright, but he's the heavy weapons guy. And then you've got like a German hacker who'll talk about movies and stuff, and it's really quite clever how they weave all these things in. It's not to a level of like, it doesn't like, you've got call outs during like combat scenarios. It's not to that level where it's really dynamic, but it's just good that it doesn't matter which mercenaries you take. It feels like you've picked the right characters, if that makes sense. Because if you had characters that talked and then a bunch of them didn't, you would always pick the ones that did. You would always pick those characters, I think, for that touch of sort of that appeal. But because it allows you to do it with all of them, it's really quite clever. And the combat's great. It's really silly. Like the storyline is quite silly. If you watch the trailer for it, the trailer for the game is basically an 80s action movie trailer, and it's very much that kind of tone that you're going for. It's big explosions and silly one-liners and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a great little game, but it is tricky. It is quite a hard game. Obviously it's turn-based tactics, so it's got a level of difficulty that's inherent, and the dreaded chance to hit, which just fucking drives me mad anyway. But it's quite good. I think I would recommend it to anybody who likes that genre or who's sort of on the fence. I would say definitely pick it up, because it does things that the others, that some things you wish it didn't, but it does a lot of things differently and new that are different to other games in the genre, which I think is worthy of praise.
Yeah, we had lukewarm feeling on the Twitch chat saying you were close enough on the Grand Chien, apparently. So well done. GCC French come to the rescue. So nice. Good work.
Grand Chien, I don't.
That's the end of the games we're going to talk about this week. So now it's just time for listener correspondence. Chris Hyde, listener correspondence. It's time. Chris Hyde. Okie dokie. So these questions were actually sent in last week, but we didn't actually have a pod last week. So they're slightly old, but they still work, and it means, Mick, that you get to answer them. So that's a joyful treat. So the first one's from McPoo, and this is to both of us, just simply asking, what's your favourite seafood? What is your favourite seafood? Mick?
Cod. A cod fillet. I don't like fish. I don't eat seafood. I'll eat tuna and I'll eat a bit of cod.
Do you know what? Like, I'm so like sad that you said that, because I'm like, okay, I need Mick to like seafood, because I don't really like seafood. It's just, do you know, I'd rather have meat. I'm the same. Like, okay, fish and chips is banging. Like cod and chips, I like that. But after that, like prawn cocktail or something.
I tried. Like, I don't even eat shrimp or prawns. I can't stand it. They physically. I did try and eat for a dare a baby octopus. I think I was in Barcelona and it was on tapas, and there was a someone had seafood tapas and they had baby octopus.
Tentacles, just like.
Yeah, and I was quite drunk, so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll try it. Oh, Jesus Christ, never again. So yeah, I do tuna, I do fish fingers, I do fish fingers in sandwiches with chips and a salad.
Fish fingers are great. I have to say, I'm always disappointed. Like if I go like on holiday and there's like it's like a all you can eat buffet, and you think you found the onion rings, and then it's calamari rings, and I'm always gutted because I hate calamari. I don't care. I'm offended now. I find they're rubbery, rubbery stuff. I think
it's just horrific.
Yeah, I think I have tried little baby squid before, because I think it's a Chinese thing as well, isn't it? So I think I have had them before, but it's not. They just look like they're waving at me. I can't. It's not something I would choose to have. I'm just. Yeah, sorry, McPoo, but
I'm one of these people that I'm one of these people that goes all out with stuff like tuna. So like, I won't eat any exotic seafood. I won't eat any other kind of fish other than sort of cod. But if I have tuna, I've got to have that in a certain way. It's got to have a little balsamic in it. It's got to have a bit of mayonnaise. It's got to have some salt and pepper.
Oh, the way you mix it in,
chopped up onion. You know, if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to do tuna on toast, I've got to do it properly. That's as exotic as my seafood gets. Is tuna?
I used to have that's put a memory in my head. I swear I used to have. This is going to sound grim, but like I swear, when I was a kid, like my gran used to make me like, you know, you probably still can get like tinned salmon. I used to have that on toast.
Yeah, my wife has that.
Yeah,
I look at it and I'm just like, it's an actual fish. Like it's not even diced up. It's not in batter. It's not in. You've got a full fish. Like you could have just gone to a pond, slapped that on a bit of bread, put that. What is that pink shit they have in the salmon? That flavouring that they have in. I don't know what that is.
Oh, I don't know, man.
No.
It's not. I'm definitely not like pro seafood. Sadly, if there's like choices, I'll be like meat. It's like when going back to the Twitter thing, when it's like, oh, which of these to delete forever? If there's prawns on it, I'm like, well, prawns. I don't even care what the other three are. I'm like, I just
don't want to eat prawns.
Sorry, Kieran, but yeah, we're not big seafood lovers. G-Town Steve says this is an interesting one. After agreeing to go into an isolation chamber for 365 days, you're allowed to take a single offline video game into the void with you. What game do you take and why?
Single offline video game.
Yeah.
Diablo 3 probably.
Yeah,
which I know has online.
But you could play it offline.
You can play it completely.
Not Diablo
offline.
4.
No.
So you can actually play it offline.
Yeah. Or maybe Tears of the Kingdom now.
Yeah.
Because I think at least you'd get some joy out of torturing Koroks if you ran out of everything else.
My obviously playing it very recently, I was like, well, Tears of the Kingdom could probably last me that long. Or I was thinking like Witcher 3 or something. Or Skyrim or something would probably last me in fact, what I should probably do, should take like the Mass Effect collection and actually fucking play them, because my wife keeps going on at me for never having played them, and I go, well, that's
you really should play them anyway. Just parcel out a bit of time at Christmas and get through those games.
I know, she keeps going on at me. She was like, she's restarted a playthrough recently, and she made me watch the intro to Mass Effect. She's like, just watch this, and like, I wasn't trying to be a cunt, but I was just like,
you can't help it sometimes.
Is that it? Like, not then nasty. I was like, I don't think it was like, I've got Oxenfree guys to go right or something. I was like, I need to, like, can we wait? But like, I probably would take those because I have never played them. It would get her off my back, and I couldn't really argue that I didn't have enough time. If I'm in an isolation chamber for 365 days, I'd probably have enough time to do them.
Skyrim's probably a good shout, because I think if you've got no online and you've just got Skyrim, and particularly if you've not played it before,
Yeah.
That's a game that you could do quite a lot in. I think that would kill quite a few hours. I mean, there's people with thousands of hours in Skyrim.
Yeah.
So I think, that's not a bad shout. Tetris.
Oh God, I would get so bored so quickly of Tetris. Like, I like Tetris, but fuck me, a year of Tetris, I'd be like, nah, you're all right.
How do I kill myself with this controller?
Yeah. Okay, and then the last was sort of like a two-part question from Deadbeat Pounder this week. So he says, it's a fictional barbecue, and you can only invite game characters. Who's on your guest list? And then also, it's like a bonus question, which virtual animal would you cook?
Okay. I'd probably invite 2B from Nier Automata, Lara Croft.
Of course you would. Of course.
Bayonetta. Jill Valentine. She comes to the party. I don't know, actually. I'll tell you what, probably, I think if you're going to have a party, I'd probably introduce characters I'd probably bring characters like someone like Nathan Drake. He's going to have some stories to tell. He's going to be a laugh, to have a beer with. I'd eat the fuck out of Yoshi, for sure. He's going on the barbecue.
But I thought I'd probably upgrade it to Donkey Kong as well, so there's more meat to go around.
That's not a bad shout, dude. If we can get two on, we can fit two characters on the barbecue.
Well, it's
that's not Yoshi and Donkey Kong.
Massive
and then invite Toad and just be like, you're next.
Just make him shit himself.
This would go well with some mushrooms. But that's a bit mean, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd probably invite Geralt from The Witcher or something. Like you say, you want someone with stories, don't you?
Yeah, but you don't want someone macking on all the ladies while you're there. I mean, you imagine bringing Geralt.
Nathan Drake could just be just not doing that. Kratos?
I don't know. Nathan Drake tends to bumble and put his foot in it a lot with the ladies. I mean, he's a good-looking guy, but
Yeah.
Whereas I think Geralt would just muscle in and be like, especially if it was the Doug Cockle voiced Geralt, you got no chance. You're going to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
They're all just going to ask him to read the phone book.
Yeah, that's true.
For the entertainment. I'd bring Mario, actually, and he could watch me eat Yoshi.
He'd probably quite like that.
Well,
he likes killing Yoshis.
Yeah. Well, he sacrifices him, doesn't he?
Well, he does, exactly.
For the sake of the double jump, off you go.
Right, okay. So Yoshi and DK are getting cooked. And then what we're saying, non-overly sexual, storied male.
Yeah, I corrected myself. Yeah, no, Nathan
you originally
Drake,
went for boobs, and then you've
Kratos would probably be quite good at that.
Yeah, Kratos, actually. I think
he would cook, wouldn't he? You know that Kratos would come in and do the cooking.
Yeah, that's true.
There'd be no option.
Yeah, that's it.
Move, and then he'd just be in fact, he'd probably kill Yoshi and Donkey Kong for you. You wouldn't have to guilt on.
Yeah, he would. No trouble whatsoever. You just get smashed. It'd be great. I think that's a great way to end listener correspondence. Let's roll the tape. Chris Hyde, listener correspondence. It's time. It's time. Chris Hyde. Okay, so Mick, I think that's a podcast for this week. We hope we wish Adam well, and we hope he gets better soon. Hopefully, he'll be back on a future podcast. I'm
sure he will be eventually.
I'm sure. Well, yeah, to be really clear, right? To be really clear,
dead,
Adam will be back. He will be back. We just don't know when. Let's be really clear.
You always let your plan slip there, Chris.
Yeah. If you've enjoyed this morbid podcast, then check out godisgeek.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Threads. We're even on there now. Or Instagram, everywhere. And hook up godisgeek.com, like I say, for all the news, reviews, guides, everything. And if you really, really like the podcast, you like what we do, and you want to support us, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/godisgeek. And for just $1 a month, you can get access to our Patreon-only Discord, where all the whiffy bants goes on and all the chatter about games.
Find out what we've done with Adam.
Find out what's happened with Adam. Find out what's happened with Lyle. Come say hello and get involved. We'd love to have you there. I guess all that's left to say is thank you very much, Mick, for a stunning podcast.
No worries.
And thank you to everyone. And we'll see you next week or whenever you choose to listen. Goodbye for now.
Bye.